Chapter 5 A New Life. Imelda often visited other religious houses in and around Bologna. One of these was the convent of St. Mary Magdalene, on the hill outside the city, known as Val de Pietra. It was an ancient place, built several centuries before by the children of St. Benedict. Later, it had been given to the nuns of the Order of St. Mark. Since 1299, however, cloistered Dominican nuns had lived here. This convent was close to Imelda's thoughts. She had a great desire to save souls, and it seemed that the Holy Spirit was urging her to set about this task more fruitfully by giving herself to the religious life. What if she was only 9 years old? In the 4th century, even very small children entered monasteries and convents. Such places were schools of the Lord's service. "Mother, I want to be a nun," the little girl declared one day. "I want to live at Val de Pietra with the sisters." Donna Castora received the announcement with mixed feelings. She had never forgotten the dream after Imelda's birth, wherein she had been given St. Dominic's blessing. As the memory came to her mind again and again, she had grown more certain that the holy man was claiming her child for his order. In the beginning, she had been thrilled and grateful, but now her mother's heart rebelled at being separated from her little one. After all, the child was so young. How could she endure the hardships of the cloister? "Darling, wait a little while," she urged. "You know the sisters are much older than you and stronger. It would be right to go there. It wouldn't be right to go there and be a trouble to them." Imelda listened respectfully, but her mind was made up. God wanted her at Val de Pietra. She was sure of that. Quickly she enlisted the aid of her uncle, the Dominican archbishop, of her father's saintly sister, Abbess Massima, of another uncle who was an Augustinian priest. To all these, as well as to her father, she described her ardent desire to be a religious, and thus gain many souls for heaven. Then she added gravely that there was another important reason for wishing to go to the convent. If she were a nun, surely she'd be allowed to receive Holy Communion. The Captain General and his wife had many long and sorrowful talks before they reached a decision. They loved Imelda dearly. But was it right to keep her at home when, to all appearances, God was calling her to his own service? Finally, the captain gave in. "Other parents give their children, Castora. Are we to be less generous?" The mother was tearful. Imelda was a child of so many prayers. For years after their marriage, they waited for God to send her to them. Now, how could they give her to the difficult life of the cloister? "Imelda's not used to hardships," insisted Donna Castora. "She's always been surrounded with luxury. Oh, Igano, what if she should die at Val de Pietra?" The Captain General soothed his wife's anxious feelings as best he could. Yes, the life of a Dominican nun was hard. She was shut away from the world by an iron grate. Sometimes food was scarce. There were long hours of prayer and work. Never could she come outside for a little vacation with friends and family. Yet was not God full of kindness and mercy? If he wished their little one to serve him in the cloister, he would give her the necessary strength. In the end, Donna Castora yielded, to Imelda's great delight, and a few weeks later came the wonderful day when the nuns agreed to receive her. As a 9-year-old girl looked upon her castle home for the last time, her heart filled with a grief which was very natural. Although it was good to be called to God's service, it was also difficult. She loved her parents so much, her friends among the poor. Then there was Beatrice, the kindly serving woman who had watched over her from babyhood. It was going to be hard to leave these dear ones forever. "This is the first sacrifice in my new life," she thought. "Dear Lord, will you use it to help some poor sinner?" On the day and at the hour agreed upon, the new candidate arrived at Val di Pietra. As she embraced her parents for the last time, the child made a real effort not to cry. "I'll never be very far away from you, Mother," she whispered. "Please don't feel lonely." Donna Castora did not guess the heartbreak in her little daughter's words. She could think of only one thing. Far from feeling sad, she was actually happy that Imelda was going to be a religious. The great gift had come to her the night before when St. Dominic had blessed her in another dream. Once again she had seen him smile, and in an instant her worried heart had known peace. The saint had made her understand that her little girl would do great things for souls. "Goodbye, dear," she murmured. "I'm so proud of you." The Captain General was deeply moved. "I'm proud too," he said. "May God bless you always, child." There was no time for long speeches. As the cloister door opened, Imelda took a deep breath and walked firmly across the threshold. Not once did she falter. As the door softly closed behind her, a white-clad figure came forward with outstretched arms. "Welcome, child, 1,000 welcomes." Imelda returned the embrace eagerly. It was the Mother Prioress, with whom she had often talked in the parlor. Nearby were other nuns she knew, but before she could greet any of these, they began to move in procession down the corridor. Lighted candles were in their hands, and they sang a joyful hymn as they walked. "We go to the chapel now," whispered the prioress, taking the child's hand in her own. "There you will receive the habit. Are you happy, little one?" Imelda's blue eyes shone with a sudden and new-found joy. "Oh, yes, Mother, so happy." What matter that in a few minutes, before the devil had filled her heart with loneliness, that he had done his best to discourage her from leading a holy life? The temptation was over and done with now. She was about to give herself to God's service. Presently, the community was assembled in the chapel. The nuns knelt along the two walls, facing one another, while the prioress took a chair near the iron grate which separated the chapel from the public church. Slowly the little newcomer approached and knelt at her feet. "What do you ask?" inquired the superior gently. Imelda's voice was confident. "God's mercy and yours." At this, one of the nuns brought forward the white wool tunic, scapular, and linen veil of a Dominican novice, while a second began to cut the child's golden curls. All was very quiet. Imelda's young heart beat with excitement as she found herself being dressed in the religious habit. Soon she would be a real nun. Soon she would be Sister Imelda. What happiness! Nothing so wonderful had ever happened to her before. But as the days passed, all was not sunshine in the new life. Sister Imelda soon learned that a novice must bear all manner of trials if she would persevere as a religious. She must learn humility and obedience, and willingly act as a servant of others. Imelda did her best to be humble and obedient, but sometimes she failed in other ways. One day she did not sweep the stairs carefully. On another she broke a dish. Again she made a mistake in the chant of the office. All these faults had to be confessed in public, and the penance given by the novice mistress humbly performed. Certain of the older sisters watched to see what Imelda would do when told to kneel before the community, either in the refectory or chapel, and recite the prayers imposed for such faults. Would she do so with a good grace? After all, the child came from a noble family. She was not used to humiliations. "Have no fear about Sister Imelda," said the prioress. "In all my days I have never seen a soul with a truer vocation." The novice mistress agreed. "Our little sister would be a good one to look after the needs of the poor," she suggested one day. "Mother Prioress, will you give her permission for that?" The prioress hesitated. The convent of St. Mary Magdalene was in the country. Many times rough wanderers appeared at the gate, their faces burned by the sun and wind, and their clothes in rags. Perhaps the crude appearance of these poor souls would frighten such a little girl. Perhaps it would be better for one of the older nuns to attend to their needs. But when questioned on this point, Sister Imelda shook her head. She was not afraid of the poor, even of those who were ill of dreadful disease. After all, a body that is sick or poorly clothed can never matter as much as the soul which it houses. Is the soul pleasing to God? This is the only question. "And what if a great sinner should come to the gate some day?" asked the prioress shrewdly. "The devil would be in that soul, little one. Would you be afraid then?" Imelda smiled in surprise. "Mother, how could I be afraid when God is in me?" she asked shyly. "I would pray for the sinner. I would ask God to drive away the devil and leave the poor man in peace." Such wisdom calmed the superior's fears, and she agreed to let the young novice have charge of the poor who came to the monastery for food. The new duty delighted Imelda, and she readily applied herself to the important task. A few days later, as she was reflecting upon her good fortune, a familiar voice caused her to look up in astonishment. The blind basket-maker had come to Val di Pietra. He was standing outside the gate. "Peter, is it really you?" she whispered. The man chuckled. "Yes, little sister. I took a walk in the country today, and a friend helped me up to the hill. There was a good reason to come, I think." Imelda peered anxiously through the small, barred window from which she gave food. Ordinarily, she was required to have her face veiled when talking to outsiders, but she did not observe this custom when looking after the poor. The prioress felt that some strangers might be a little timid at the sight of a veiled figure. Therefore, Imelda had permission to see and be seen by all who came to her for help. "Something's wrong at home?" she said slowly. "That's why you've come. Oh, Peter, what is it? Tell me." The blind man caught the anxiety in his young friend's voice and quickly tried to reassure her. There is no bad news. Instead, he had come from Bologna to make a little gift. 20 gold pieces, sister," he said cheerfully. "See, they were given to me yesterday by a rich man." Imelda sighed with relief, then gently shook her head at the sight of the glistening coins. "Peter, you know you can use this money yourself." "And what about the mother prioress?" "Little sister, more than one beggar has been made happy by her generosity. Now give this money to her when you can, and don't forget to pray for me." Unwillingly, Imelda took the coins which Peter passed through the barred window. What could she say to this good friend? Time was growing short. Very soon the bell would call the community to choir. "Peter, I do pray for you," she said gently. "Every day, you know that. But I fear I can never pray for you or anyone as I really wish." The blind man smiled. "As you wish? What do you mean, little sister?" A sudden sadness clouded Imelda's blue eyes. "I mean, with our Lord in my heart. You see, the sisters still think I'm too young to understand about the Holy Eucharist. Oh, Peter, when will they let me make my first communion? When will they let me pray for people as I really want to pray?" The blind man was silent. He could not see his young friend, but the loneliness in her voice was heartbreaking. If anyone loved our Lord, if anyone appreciated the mystery of the Holy Eucharist, surely it was this child of 9 years.